Namaskar and welcome to Indian Diplomacy, a show on India's national broadcaster Doordarshan about Indian foreign policy, India's international relations, and India's engagements with important countries and blocs around the world. Viewers, in this episode, we are taking a close look at India's highly consequential and fast growing strategic partnership with the European Union. The EU, which has 27 member countries, has entered into a new era of friendship and cooperation with India in many dimensions. So, what is driving EU India strategic partnership to stratospheric heights, and what are the possibilities for this partnership to accomplish not just bilateral goals of both sides, but also remake the world order itself? These are some of the themes of the show. And to discuss this, I'm very privileged to introduce you to a European expert, Susanne Kamerling. She is associate fellow at the Leiden Asia Centre at Leiden University in the Netherlands, and has worked both in China and India, and knows this part of the world very well, and is a specialist on Europe-Asia relations. Susanna, welcome to Indian Diplomacy.
Thank you so much.
Susanna, it's a great time for us to raise a toast. The India-EU free trade agreement, which has been like, holy grail. We've been chasing it for, since 2007, when the first round of negotiations started, and, in fits. Finally, 2026, we have been able to to make it happen. The European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen succinctly said, we did it. So we have concluded negotiations, and it's going to enter into force in 2027. And so we are in that, really happy period where finally this game-changing FTA has been signed, and there are going to be, unlocking lots of benefits for both sides. I wanted you to come in and talk about the European perspective on this, because Europe has been looking to diversify its trade partnerships, and it has done one with the Mercosur countries of Latin America as well. But India looks like the biggest prize and the most important one from their perspective. So please tell us, sitting from where you are, how important is India as an economic partner, and especially at this juncture for the EU, and why is it that both sides could, you think, finally reach the finish line after so many stop-start type of, processes over a long time?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, like you mentioned, that it has been a long time due. It's almost 20 years now since we've started negotiations. And it could have easily gone on for another 10 years, whereas not for the geopolitical moments which we find ourselves in. From the EU side, the relationship with the US have been very volatile. We have had troubles with the partnership with China. We have the Ukraine war going on. We are facing Russia. So the EU and Europe finds itself quite a double with former, or an ally, not a former, but an ally, the US, who is not so favorable towards the EU nowadays, especially since the national security strategy. We cannot deny that the EU has to become more independent from the US. So the geopolitical moments towards the US, towards Russia, economically towards China, is very important for the EU to have decided about a year ago that this was something that we should have, we should go through with. That India is a partner that we should strengthen our ties with, especially economically, but also politically and strategically. So this FTA is really something that has been rushed basically within 9 months, which is quite an achievement to have been signed. This is something that it's been decided about a year ago, maybe shorter even, that it was really needed for the EU.
Yeah. And Susanna, one of the things that caught my attention is when the EU-India summit happened, and even prior to that, in the European Parliament, the talk was about how doing these trade agreements will enhance not just the business prospects for both sides, and, we are being told that this is, a confluence of two economies that will make it close to $30 trillion, integration of a two major economies of the world and all that, and exports are going to boom, and lots of sectors are going to gain. But what I also observed was something more intangible, which is the leaders talking about how this will enhance their independence in the world. And our external affairs minister, Dr. Subramanian Jaishankar, said that this is a big step towards de-risking the world order. And in the past, de-risking is a term that the Europeans were using vis-a-vis China. But now, getting closer to India is also seen as de-risking, and presumably, like you're saying, vis-a-vis the US. So what is the impact of this in terms of this sovereign independence or strategic autonomy, or de-risking? And secondly, how is this going to impact the world order? Many European leaders are saying that, for a rules-based order to be preserved, we need agreements and bilateral cooperation of this sort, with big countries like India. So your thoughts on what is the link between the the enhanced strategic partnership we are seeing and this rules-based order and the strategic autonomy of the EU?
Yeah, like you mentioned, the EU has been using the term strategic autonomy for about a decade now, but it used to be more related to security and defense. Now it is becoming more geopolitical, more geo-economic as well. And indeed, not only our dependence on Statica, but also our dependence on the US should be something that we should decrease. It's the realization has been there for a while, but has been quite harsh the last couple of months, let's say, in the second term of Trump. We just had the crisis over Greenland. You must have noticed as well, where it was really a crisis also within the NATO and the larger setting of NATO, that we risked being vis-a-vis the US in terms of military. So there was really a crisis between Denmark and the US. Obviously, Greenland is the sovereignty of Denmark. So we needed some good news as well in Europe. It has not been a very easy time for the EU. And this has really helped in that sense, that the FTA with Mercosur and also the FTA with India shows that the EU is really looking to diversify in many ways, and also looking for new partners and new allies in the world. And indeed, like you mentioned, the rules-based order is something that has been questioned by the US, if not to say undermined. Recently, with intervention in Venezuela, with the crisis in Greenland, potentially. And the EU really stands for these values still. We stand for the international rules-based, or not the international order, let's say, not the US version of the rules-based order, but the international order. In which rule of law is important, in which non-multilateralism is important. The EU is very much still these values-based power, and it still aims to be. And in that regard, we also need to find new partners with India and also in the global south. This realization has been really present in discussions in European capitals the last few months.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, as you say, this kind of integration is part of a broader diversification trend that we are seeing globally. And that's something, the Trump push factor has definitely been, a catalyst for this. But of course, viewers, I must remind you all that it's not just because of the US, because India, EU already have 180 billion euros plus of trade, and the FTA is going to, possibly double or triple or quadruple this figure in the, years and the decades to come. So there is a pre-existing, India EU cooperation on a variety of, especially economic areas.
Yeah, the strategic partnership between the EU and India has been there already. There have been a few milestones as well leading up to this in the past couple of years, such as the EU-India Trade and Technology Council from 2022, The EU and India also joined in the India Middle East Europe corridor, the EMAC, in 2023. So there have been a couple of things leading up to this. This is not like only the Trump factor, like you mentioned. The US realized, well, years ago, I guess, that India is an important partner. But real progress really needs to happen still. Also on strategic partnership, on security cooperation. This has already been a part of the summits, of the India summits and strategic partnership. So this is in a sense also a beginning, in the sense that we still have to implement that and take that momentum and bring it forward in terms of security cooperation, in terms of cooperation in technology, investments in defense. But this has been there for a while, but this is hopefully a new impetus to deepen that cooperation.
Yeah, we are looking at a quantum leap. So already there is a pre-existing cooperation, but we expect this to be, significantly scaled up. Susanna, you already mentioned defense, and let me go there. We have also, apart from the FTA, which is an economic agreement, there's also the new EU-India defense, security and defense partnership that's been announced. And this is going to be the framework under which EU as a whole is going to engage with India on a range of issues such as maritime security, counterterrorism, cyber security, space cooperation, and also things like defense industrial production. Now, these are the things which are new and emerging, right? Because historically, we have done that mostly only with France. And France has, as you know, been a long-term defense partner for India, but not the EU as a whole. So, your thoughts on this, new security and defense partnership, and especially from the European point of view, what are they looking to gain by entering into a security and defense partnership with India? And given the geographical distance, people always ask the question: can the Europeans really matter much in the Indian Ocean and in the Indo-Pacific, which is our backyard here in Asia? And what are the synergies you are seeing in that we can accomplish through this new security and defense partnership, in spite of the past not being one of high accomplishment in this field, but we are now expecting to make giant strides in the future?
Yeah, so some of these issues have been a part of the strategic partnership between the EU and India already, also in terms of security. So was cyber already been a topic, counter-terrorism and maritime security, and peacekeeping. So these were the topics that were already part of the EU-India strategic partnership for years. Maybe some of them are new. So cyber was there, but space is relatively new. Racial activities, perhaps something that we could take forward. So these talks were there. Security cooperation intentions were there, but I think we can increase that and bring that forward. In terms of maritime security, the EU and India have already worked since 2008 or 9 in the Western Indian Ocean, the Gulf of Aden specifically. Cooperated quite intensively when the piracy attacks happened and started in Somalia, the Gulf of Aden. So this is also something that is not new, but recently there has been a joint naval exercise. So there was cooperation already within the framework of what happened in counter-piracy operations in the Gulf of Aden, for example. But there was joint naval exercise now in the Gulf of Guinea. Yeah, exactly. Near the coast of Guinea, there was a joint naval cooperation. So there are things that are being stepped up, indeed. In terms of defense industry and production, I think this is a topic that it's already on the agenda for a long time. But indeed, like you mentioned, especially France and Germany have been really good partners in that regard. But I think we can expand that to other European countries as well. The Netherlands might also be some interesting in terms of maritime security and defense cooperation. We're quite active in that. And you're right. I mean, the EU is not a strong security actor in the Indian Ocean, at the broader Asia Pacific, but It tends to be involved in maritime security, in especially in the Western Indian Ocean. There are also countries like UK, not EU, but still European, that have military exercises, of course, through the Indian Ocean and also towards China, Japan, etc. The Netherlands has also joined that, for example. So every 2 years we tend to go to the Asia Pacific. So there are quite a few activities there. And I think the EU and many European countries intend to expand that present activity in the Indian Ocean.
Right. Yeah. So, New Horizons viewers in security and defense. And this is indeed very interesting. We do need to, of course, converge more on what is the shared threat perception. That's not very clear. With the US, it's very clear that, counterbalancing China has always been the, core bedrock of US India strategic partnership and military cooperation in the Indo Pacific. But with the Europeans, we still need to see whether there is that much clarity about jointly counterbalancing China, or is it more ambiguous? Let me take this a little forward with you, Susanna. With China, the EU has had a roller coaster. They have been saying that they are partners, but also systemic rivals. But lately, you see that trade disputes between China and the EU have escalated over electric vehicles and dairy products and so much else. And it looks like European industry is worried about competition from China, and the China shock and all those things, which may harm domestic industries back in Europe. So what is your reading of the European approach to China now? And again, juxtaposed to this warming up to India that we are now seeing with all these new agreements. But on the other hand, with the Chinese, I think the Europeans have become much more wary and more competitive than cooperative, isn't it? That's my reading. So is this some kind of like the seesaw, going the other direction, where India is now going to become far more important to the Europeans because of their growing concerns about China? Or you see these two as unrelated or separate tracks in Asia?
Well, they're not completely unrelated, obviously. The EU and European partners will not be say that they're countering China directly, but indirectly, I think this does play a role. The EU indeed always says that, or since 2019 says that China is a partner, competitor, and systemic rival. This will remain the policy line I expect for the coming years. So it's all three at the same time. So partnering will also be part of it still. I think we're too dependent on China to completely decouple, and that is not the intention. De-risking is more, and diversifying is more the policy line at the moment. So we had a EU-China summit in July last year. It was not very successful, especially because there are tensions around China's support for Russia and Ukraine. Ursula von der Leyen also said that the relation between the EU and China will depend on how China reacts in the war in Ukraine and its support for Russia in that sense. So this is really related more to worries over Ukraine and China's support of Russia in that sense. Next to that, you said, so indeed, the EU has become more wary of China, and this is a trend that has been going on since about maybe 5 to 8 years, depending on which EU country you talk of. So in Germany, for example, the inflection point would be 2016 when the robotics firm KUKA was being attempted to be taken over by China, by a Chinese company. In France, it's another year. So in Netherlands, we were a bit slower in that sense, but this has been a realization also in the last couple of let's say 5 to 8 years. So it really depends on which European country you speak of. But this wariness over China has been going on especially in the last 5 years. over Ukraine, over the COVID crisis. This was also a really important moment in that sense that China has been increasingly active also in influence operations in Europe, disinformation, in cooperating with Russia in that regard, in hybrid activities, gray zone activities, in information warfare. China has been becoming more active also in Europe. And this has not been overseen by Brussels and in the most European capitals. So indeed, this will remain a tension. Many European countries are considering, especially takeovers by Chinese companies, digital sovereignty towards China, but also towards the US. And I think this will be like this for the next couple of years, and decades. We will diversify away. We'll attempt to diversify away from China and the US, but it will also remain a partner, an important export market, an important market and economic partner for the EU.
Right. So, viewers, our expert from the Netherlands is saying that Europeans will look to diversify away from both China and the US going into the future. And of course, it's quite obvious that India fits in to that picture because we are not threatening either European industry or economic competitiveness or European security. So, in that sense, India probably comes across as much more benign. But Susanna, let me also go to another agreement that has been signed, which is the Mobility Pact, comprehensive mobility agreement between EU and India for our students, researchers, professionals, scientists, business persons to be able to access the EU and to move within the EU much freely. So this is obviously going to probably be a corollary to the FTA and to the increasing investments, two-way investments, where professionals need to be able to travel with ease. So on that front, how do you see mobility playing an important role in the overall EU-India strategic partnership? Because there have been concerns about anti-immigrant politics and far-right groups and attacks on Indians in some European countries, and they get a lot of headlines here in India. Is the social and the political fabric in Europe right now conducive for this kind of mobility pact to really work, or will there be challenges if they see more Indians, quote unquote, coming and taking away their jobs out there?
Well, this is a very, very important question, and it's not easy to answer. Well, the fact and the reality is that Europe will face enormous labor shortages. We need migrants for certain sectors. We need migrants, highly skilled migrants, and India has many of those. So if we look at the reality and the facts and the figures, we have to realize that we need migrants. But like you say, this is a very, very sensitive topic because there are also a lot of anti-immigration sentiments in many European countries, from right-wing movements, but also across the board, I must say. So it has been traditionally the right-wing movement kind of argument, but the immigration concerns have moved across the board in political sense. So this is something that I think this is a task for political leaders to really explain what the situation is, why we need it, how we need it, why we invite migrants, why migrants are welcome, to be able to gain enough support among the populations in Europe for this, and to make the difference between maybe economic migrants from countries or asylum seekers and knowledge migrants that we actually need. This is the distinction that has not been clearly made by political leaders, not sufficiently, I would say, and we need that courage, I would say, by political leaders to really explain that better to the European audiences.
Right. Last word, Susanna, we're almost out of time. So overall, I mean, if you add up the economic, the security, and the people to people through mobility, it looks like things are really, really positive. And is there anything to be worried at all about EU-India engagement? Could outside players play spoil sport? I mean, the US has already expressed unhappiness over Europe's, mega mother of all trade deals with India and so on. So, could there be external, elements that would try and ruin the party for the EU and India? You think, or do you think we will stick to this line of strategic autonomy? This is in our best interest, and nobody can stop us.
I think external actors might play a role in the sense that they're very unpredictable at the moment, just specifically from the transatlantic side. But I think the realization is really there that we have to stick to this line of EU strategic autonomy, and India has been doing this, of course, much longer than the EU. So I don't see that this will change anytime soon, and I don't see that this line will be interrupted by external actors. However, like I said earlier, but this is really the beginning. A lot of work has to be done. And it's really important that progress on the ground is really made now, concrete progress in all these areas, not only the FTA, but also security defense cooperation. So we really have to move it forward in the coming years, and that is really important, and to see the successes of this, and to see that this really helps the EU and India is something that also is needed, I think, for European audiences and the Indian audience as well.
Absolutely. Viewers, very, very informative discussion with Susanne Kamerling from the University of Leiden in the Netherlands. And what we have learned is that the free trade agreement, the security defense partnership, the mobility pact, all these are milestones, but they have just, this is the beginning, as our guest mentioned. And the thing is, we need to walk the talk. We need to actually implement a lot of these, ideas on which we have found agreement and consensus through painstaking negotiations. But ultimately, the ratification and the step-by-step processes for all of these will take time, and the benefits will kick in, but not immediately. So therefore, we need to also exercise some strategic patience and persist with the relationship building. Because this is a long-term friendship for us with the Europeans, and increasingly in this kind of highly volatile and uncertain world, we are trying to create some pockets of certainty, stability, and predictability. And with the EU, we don't foresee any kind of sudden reversals or U-turns or twists like we are seeing with some of our other big partners. And therefore, I think we are going to persist with this because this is a loyal friendship, and this is only going to get bigger and bigger. Let me thank Susanne for joining me on the show, sharing your insights, and also doing the valuable work of promoting India-EU friendship.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Viewers, the EU-India strategic partnership has got a turbocharge. It's going galloping speed, and it's likely to only gather further momentum as the years roll by. So the historic steps taken in 2026 are going to bear long-term fruit. But we need to have patience, and we need to also work on the nitty-gritty now, because the big picture is India and EU are together and nobody can separate them. But, the devil lies in the details, and a lot of work lies ahead. So let's cheer for the EU-India friendship and will that it grows to greater heights and touches the stratospheric levels. Thank you for watching. I'll see you again next time. Until then, take care.